just play through the whole thing and we'll talk about it after. Yes. Bravo. Very, very well done. What an accomplished performance already. Great, great. So the connection quality is terrible. I can hardly hear what's going on, actually.
That's
Brian?
yes. I could hear that the audio was not as good. But
yeah, it kept
that's
like fading out and like
fading. Yes, that's the sad reality of internet lessons. But at least Albert got to perform and
yes, no, it's fantastic. No. I mean, I will try to say what I can from what I could hear. Like, so if I'm saying something that's wrong, forgive me. I just like I can't tell exactly what's going on. So this is just like my basic idea of what's going on here. I think I have two main comments for you, Albert. This is really great. The first is that I think, what does pathetique mean? What do you think this word means to you? Well, what is Beethoven trying to say here?
Pathetique?
Yeah.
Like sad and angry.
There's an English word which is very close to this, the French word, pathos. You know this word? Pathos. This is the same word. It comes from the same word, this pathetique. So, yes, sad, angry, but primarily this is a very big drama. You have to think of it sometimes in operatic terms. Like, you've gone to the opera before? You've seen operas? Have you ever been to the opera? You should go to the opera. You have to see operas like Mozart, Don Giovanni, like to see the drama that arises when two characters are in conflict, for example. There's tension there. So I think that there's not only a lot of pathos in this piece, but I think, especially this first movement, the drama happens from very big contrasts. Contrast between loud and soft, between fast and slow, between different kinds of characters, different kinds of articulations. And I feel like sometimes you have a desire to smoothen the differences. You make it a little bit more harmonized. The dynamics sometimes are not so extreme. Sometimes the pianos are a bit close to the fortes. I think what you might want to try to look for in your performance is to highlight those differences, those contrasts that Beethoven wrote in the music. I feel like, for example, when you start the Allegro, you're already too loud and too energetic. You know, this energy has to be contained and bubbling inside you. Don't let your left hand become too baga 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 too soon. It should be like a distant drum roll, very, very kind of full of tension and fear. You're not exploding yet, so that when these loud moments, you know, declamations come, then it's a very big difference. You know, don't give away all your drama and energy too soon. You have to make sure that you save it for those moments. Also, for example, at the beginning, you know, when you have these kinds of things, you know, this thing turned off. When you have, for example, these themes, just 1 second, let me, okay, you know, the sound that you have for this and is almost the same, actually. Like, you want to make it feel like these are two different people. When you play it, it sounds like it's one person playing and singing this. But you really want to feel like this is one idea, one character. And that's something else. So that we have a big contrast between like this E flat major and the diminished seventh chord, between, you know, one character, it might be a female character because it's further high up, and then we have, you know, an angry man against, you know, you want to make it feel like there's more of an argument here rather than one idea smoothly, you know, smoothly flowing into the next. Do you see what I mean? And the second important thing I think you need to watch out for is I feel like the rests for you are empty. You play, and there's a rest, you wait, and then you play. But no, the silences are one of the most important parts of the piece. They are full, they are really dense. So please don't do this. You know, I see you doing this. You know, you take your hands off, then you prepare again. You know, no, those, you have to keep the listener, you know, with the tension in this. You know, don't relax. Don't relax. It will affect the sound of your next chord. It's not just a visual thing. And also it will affect your pulse, because sometimes your rests are impatient. You cut time, you hurry when you're not playing anything, especially at the end. You have to have an iron strict pulse in your head, you know, for that, you know, when you have those breaks in the end, the last time this opening theme comes, you know, from bars 295 to 298. And wait, and wait. You know, you were cutting them down. Don't make any physical motions, don't count along, but you should have that strict pulse in your head. And it's the way in which you can continue keeping that tension, okay? So there are two broad things that I would ask you to do, you know, try to make the most of these differences that Beethoven has composed, and really explore the power of the silences in this piece. It's really going to, you know, give you another dimension to your playing, okay? So let's try to work through a couple of things, though. It's so hard for me to hear what you're doing that I really, you know, I'm really gonna have a tough time knowing whether, you know, what direction we're going in, but let's try it, okay? So could you just start the beginning? Okay, so okay, Albert, so great. Don't forget that the little notes go to the big notes. Sometimes you do this. You accent yapam, but remember it's pa-pam, pa-pam. This should lead to this. Not, you see what I mean? Don't give the small note more weight than the long note. Okay, pa-pam, pa-pam. And also, yes, oh, okay, so Brian has brought in the score. Oh, this is wonderful. Oh, and it's Henle as well. How professional. So, okay. And one other thing to remember is that don't be too tied to the idea that the small note is, exactly in the relationship of 3 against 1 with the big note. When we are taught in school what a dotted rhythm means, it means that instead of, as even rhythm, we have 3 plus 1. It goes pam, pam, pam. Yeah, that's what we're taught. But in this period of time, all that the dotted rhythm meant was that you have a longer note and a shorter note. You don't need to think dam, pa, pam. So sometimes you can use that to make the rhythm a bit more powerful. You can either make it a bit shorter if you want. You could go like pam, pa, pam, pa, pam, or you could actually make the small notes even longer if you want. Ti, 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 something like that. Don't get too stuck in the 3 plus 1 mentality, because that was not how performers in this period and composers in this period of time read the dotted note rhythm. It was much more flexible than what, teachers will tell us when we first learn how to read music today, okay? But be careful about making sure that the proportions between less important rhythmic units and more important rhythmic units are kept. Don't let the small note become more loud and more accented than the notes they're leading to, okay? So, and make sure that in the rest, you keep the tension going. Don't let it relax, okay? Just give it another shot. Okay, fantastic. So I see you've taken this rhythm idea, which is great, but now your small notes have become so long that they start pushing the pulse all over the place. It drags a little bit. So split the difference, something in the middle. I would actually go for making the notes perhaps a little shorter than written, because this is almost like a French overture, pa-pam, pa-pam. So don't let it go pa-pam, pa-pam. I think it loses the tension and strength. Also, I think it's really important to fade out as much as you can here. Maybe not, to pianissimo, but you have to set up the next motion. You need to drop enough so that the motion afterwards, in bar 4 is really special. Ti, ti, da, dam. It should feel like a change in direction. Something that the listener is not expecting. Don't play it as if it's business as usual. It has to be a change in direction, okay? And when you get to this, this is really operatic. This is like a singer with a kind of decorated passage. So don't rush through it. Give yourself time to like if you try to sing it, you'll see how hard it is to sing that high. It should feel like it requires some tension to reach those high notes. Don't just go, yeah, okay? Don't make it so easy. It has to have this sense of struggle. And then you can continue when it becomes easier when you come down, okay? But make the high notes feel like there's more tension there, okay? Now I'll stop talking and you play it once again. If you just go from the beginning, that would be great. Yeah, great. Sorry to stop you once again, but it's a little bit loud, too much energy. Remember, it's forte piano. That energy should be contained. Don't express it in volume. Express it in tension, but not. And so that you really have this dynamic contrast between forte and piano. That's exactly the kind of contrast I'm talking about. Okay? I promise I won't interrupt you again. Go ahead. Okay, great, fantastic. Okay, it's so much better. You're responding very fast to these ideas I'm suggesting. So brilliant. I don't want to go through the whole thing in detail. It would be good if we could take a look at some other sections as well. Just one important thing. The piano is an unusual instrument in that once we play a note, we have very little control over what we can do with the note afterwards, right? We play it, it's out of our hands. Yes, we can change the pedaling. Of course, we will affect the release of the note, but in terms of the progress of the note, we don't have much we can do. So it's so important to listen to the decay of the note. When you play this, you have to listen very carefully to the dynamic level so you can play the next note, as a continuation of it, after the decay in dynamic level of the accented note, okay? Because remember, in this time period, when you have a two-note phrase, it means that the first note is louder than the second note, okay? So when you see this, don't play the second note as loud as the first note. It has to be quieter. Always. In this time period, a two-note phrase means a decrescendo. This mark, the phrase mark, the slur, also means that you have to taper out. Now, if you have a long phrase mark, don't just decrescendo all the time because you'll lose a sense of direction. But with these two-note phrases, you have to have this relationship, pa-pam, ti-ti-ram, not ti-pam, okay? Avoid that. Make sure it's ti. I'm just exaggerating now, but something like that, okay? You don't need to go back and do it again. Just keep that in mind for next time. And also, look at how Beethoven marks the last bar of the opening grave before the Allegro. He first marks a sextuplet, and then a septuplet, and then speeds up. So don't just start the chromatic scale, at the fast tempo. You have to speed up a little bit. You have to start out a little bit slower, and then speed up. But also, feel like you're on a slide. You know, you've been on a slide before, right? At the top of the slide, you go slower and then you speed up. So it's the same kind of thing here. Don't just start, you know, at full speed. You need to move into it a little bit, because it's strange for the listener to feel that, you know, and then all of a sudden, you know, we run. We need to, and then so forth. Okay, so give yourself that moment of transformation. It will make it feel smoother and more organic, and not like, you know, just like a strange cut. Okay, so but that's enough about the opening. We have like 3 minutes left, so let's just try to work a little bit on the Allegro. I don't want to talk too much. Let's just keep moving. Okay, so can you just start the Allegro or just the bar before? Okay, great. So very quickly, I think you need to try to practice this, getting it down to a dynamic level as quiet as possible. You don't need to play it as quietly as possible, but you know, we're playing something that is fast, but we have to get used to actually playing the notes very slowly. The notes happen in quick succession, but in order to make it quiet, the actual playing of the note should not be fast. Otherwise, it's going to be loud. You know, we need to get used to, you know, practicing with very close contact with the keyboard to make it really like a drum roll and not like a taka 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 taka, because that's not what we want here. Because there tends to be too much noise at the beginning. It should be really, and then when the crescendo happens, then it will really happen. It's just a little too loud. Also, when you see a sforzato, it's a sforzato in that dynamic marking. So a sforzato in piano is going to be quieter than a sforzato in forte. Okay? So when you see this, don't make it so loud. Make it more like pa, pa, like very concentrated. Like try to voice it towards your fifth finger, not your thumb. So it's got that sharpness, you know, rather than it sounding flat. You want that kind of edge, you know, which will help you get that kind of cutting sound, right? Okay, so make sure that you keep things in proportion. If I have an accent in piano, it's going to be very different than if I have that same accent in forte. Okay, so make sure you're careful about these sudden exclamations. They are in a certain context. Okay, now let's keep moving. You can take care of that alone. Let's just play a little more and then we'll have to wrap up. Okay, so can you just do from like I don't know, like this last section going into the next page. Good. Okay, great. So I'll say my last thing about this section now. What do you imagine? What kind of ensemble do you imagine here? You know, when we play piano, we should often, have examples of orchestras, ensembles. You know, what do you imagine? Another instrument, another bunch of instruments playing this section? Okay. I would let you think, but we have so little time that I'll tell you what I think. I think this is really like a string quartet. You know, you have that's our cello, you know, that's our first violin, that's our viola, and that's our second violin. Okay, so it's really like a string quartet. They are not all playing the same dynamic level. I think you need to organize your dynamic levels a bit more. For example, I don't think should be so loud. You know, I think should obviously be the loudest. Then you have this. it's almost, like the viola is imitating a horn, and then should be the, least present, because now I'm here, ta 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 ta, too loud, and it blocks everything else. It makes the sound a bit chaotic. So anytime you're playing, you should think, okay, in this texture, what's the most important thing that I need to bring out? What's the next most important thing, and so forth. You have to create layers. You can't let all the notes sound the same dynamic level. If you're playing a certain texture, they should always be in different layers. Something is closer to the front, something is further away, okay? And that will help give your playing an extra dimension, so that the listener knows exactly what is really important, what's the main theme, the bass line, the harmony, and we don't, confuse all of these, okay? You'll have these clearer textures if you do so. But otherwise, you're doing a fantastic job. I hope that you continue enjoying playing and working on this piece, and it was really great for you to join us. Thank you so much. Very, very well done.
Thank you.
Thank you, Albert. Thank you so much. That was a wonderful performance. All right.